Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 309. I'm your host, Michael. Sorry for those who are checking us out on live on YouTube. Sorry for starting things late. I got behind with some things, and it happens. Joining me this evening is Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Good evening, all. Good day, all. Whenever you're listening to this.
Indeed. A lot been happening, particularly over the last
Good evening.
36 to 48 hours. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. If you want to find out all of information regarding the show, the blog page for the time being is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. If you're checking us out live on YouTube, just hit the description box below. If you want to go to the blog page, on the top right-hand portion of the blog page, you'll find all information where to find us all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, where to find the show on all platforms that carry podcasts like your Spotify, your iTunes, your Google Podcasts, and Mixcloud, and everything in between. We're just about everywhere at this time being. Links to where you can donate to the show. Let donation be the best nation. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. $2, $5, $1, $10, or if you got a little spare change, it doesn't matter. It will help. It will contribute greatly to the production behind the show, behind the scenes. And last but certainly not least, with this being the holiday season, if you're looking to lose some of them holiday pounds or get into shape or try to set up for a New Year's resolution as we get ready to less than a month before we hit into 2021, and thank goodness 2020 is as problematic as it's been. It's close to being ended. It's close to ending. I am an online coach for Beachbody.com. I am almost at the end of my current group fitness challenge for November. Let's build together. Get ready to for November. Get ready to start a new one for this month and going into the new year. If you're interested in any of the programs on Beachbody On Demands, whether it's your classic programs like P90X, P90X2 and 3, programs like Shift Shop, 6 weeks of the work, PIO, which is very popular with the ladies. Whatever your fitness goals or particular interests, Beachbody On Demand, it has it all. Insanity, 10 rounds is what I'm doing in terms of this current group challenge. Just check me out. Just check out my online fitness coaching page on Beachbody On Demand. Or if you're just interested in 2 weeks of free workouts, Beachbody On Demand offers a 2-week trial period that's free. It runs throughout the year. So if you just want to get 2 weeks of free workouts in, just hit me up on Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page, the fitness portion of the blog page, or just hit me up on Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. That's at P4P Box Report on Twitter, or just my personal Twitter page, Brother JR at Brother JR76. Let's get things going this evening. Recapping what went down this weekend. Let's start with the big fight that took place in Texas, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, to be specific. Going to you, Gail, always ladies first. The return of Errol Spence. Had a car accident, horrific looking car accident in October 2019. At the time, it looked like his career may have been over just because of how horrific that car crash looked. It's a miracle that he got out of it relatively clean. He did suffer some injuries, has been in recovery mode. That plus the pandemic of COVID-19 has had him on the shelf since that car accident in October last year. Made his return to the ring against one Danny Garcia. Spence defended his WBC, IBF World Welterweight titles, and he won by decision, 12 rounds, 8-4 on two of the scorecards. I think 9-3 on the third. Gail, any questions about Spence heading into this fight, whether he would be the same fighter as he was prior to the accident? He answered that in full, in my opinion. Spence did what Spence usually does. He set the tone with the jab, the skill, the aggressiveness, the punch rate, the power when he needed it. It was thorough. He The first half of the fight, I felt he dominated thoroughly. In the middle towards the end, he took a couple of rounds off. Garcia tried to come on at the very end of the last round, last 30 to last minute of the last round. But overall, given what Spence has gone through, very impressive performance in my opinion. Your reaction to what you saw?
Seeing was believing. We had a lot of questions, and no matter what Errol said, no matter what Derek James said, no matter what he looked like physically, we needed to see exactly what we saw Saturday. No break in his quality, no break in his ability to command the ring, lead the fight all the way through. I mean, really, he didn't even seem like he had what would be very understandable ring rust just having been out that long. A lot of fighters have had long breaks this year through no fault of their own. And they get in there, and, first a couple of rounds, if they don't look too good, or maybe they really even need toward the middle rounds to really get up to speed. And Errol had every excuse in the world. He looked better than 80% of the guys we've seen come in after a 6-month, 8-month, 10-month break. Truly impressive. Garcia just couldn't figure him out. Garcia was not busy enough. He just didn't have a lot to offer. My only surprise, frankly, was how close two of those scorecards were. 116 to 112 seemed a little close to me. I personally had it 118 to 110 for Errol Spence. I'm okay with Tim Cheatham's card at 117, 111. There were a few close rounds, but Danny Garcia only landed double digits in punches in a single round, which was, I believe, the fourth round. He was just outworked, outclassed, outmuscled, outmaneuvered, outshone all the way around.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Um, your impressions on what you saw. For me, Gail mentioned that there seems to be no ring rust. That speaks to the work that he put in leading up to this fight. I'm guessing he did a lot of sparring to keep himself sharp. I know you mentioned on Twitter you would have liked to see him in a tune-up fight heading into it. Do you still feel the same way now that you had a couple of days to think about uh, what you saw?
Yeah, as far as as far as the fight itself, I had it 8-4. I had to score 8-4 a little bit because there were moments, some rounds where, especially like I think it was the 738th round, where there was a clash of heads and you had a gash in Spence's right eye and it really bothered. In the following round, Garcia made it a mission to just try to target that particular part of the head, abandoning the body attack, mind you. But like, I had it 8-4. Now, when it came to the mechanics of the fight itself, two things came out of the situation. One is that yes, Spence did look good for the amount of time that he was fighting, but a fully I mentioned Twitter, I said it on Twitter myself. A fully healthy Spence would have knocked Danny out. He would have knocked Danny out. You can tell that even at this stage, even look this good, he wasn't fully healthy yet. And the second thing was, for all the little adjustments Danny was making, and for all the weathering he was trying to do, trying to see if Spence could get tired after that long day off, he didn't have the power to hurt him consistently at welterweight. And that's been the big question mark when it comes to Garcia. It's, can he have the power to actually hurt top level fighters at 147? And more often than not, he has not, especially when it comes to this fight. And especially in a fight where Spence, he weathered, I think, the eighth and ninth round where he looked really, really tired and was able to get somewhat of a second win and started attacking the body really well. The issue, unfortunately, was that at the end of the day, after winning the card convincingly and after clearing out any doubts as far as what he is capable of doing, we know what the question is. We know what the question was, and we know who the person was in the audience going into it. And that will confound anything that happens throughout this fight. But a good performance by Spence. Like I said, I still say he should have had some type of tune-up fight. If you're already scheduled to fight Danny, you could hold it off a little bit. It's not like there's actually any promotional roadblocks here. And had tune-up fight, and then fight Danny probably in the spring of 2021, and then maybe put on the performance you can put on against somebody like Danny Garcia.
It's easy and it's obvious to talk about what's next for Spence. Daniel alluded to it somewhat in his breakdown. Fighters, fans, and the like are really heaping praise, and deservedly so, for how he performed, and as well as the fact that he looks fully healthy and he's back in the ring doing his thing. But I want to focus on Garcia. I'm a writer for Three Kings Boxing. Shout out to the Three Kings Boxing crew, 2K, Bo, Bakari, Jarrell, Red. My latest article for on threekingsboxing.com is about Daniel Garcia and his father, Angel, specifically. Um, Gayle, Daniel, and myself were talking about this before the show, before we hit the record button. I have questions about one Angel Garcia. Gayle, you alluded to the fact that you mentioned the fact that Garcia could let his hands go. Um, that was one of the main complaints from Angel during the post-fight press conference. I was watching it, and maybe I'm being a little bit sensitive here, but I felt some kind of way about Angel and his comments. To me, it came off as Angel throwing his son under the bus. Uh, yes, he mentioned that Danny didn't throw enough punches, and technically he's right about that. My problem is during the fight, in between rounds, he mentioned that you're not being active enough. You're not being active enough, and that was it. Where was the second instruction? Where was Garcia kept getting hit with the jab consistently from round one? Where was the instructions on how to avoid the jab? Where was the instructions in terms of exactly what punches to throw? It's not enough just to say be more active. If you just throwing punches, Spence is too smart of a fighter he's smart enough where he can adjust to that. Um, you have to hit him with certain punches to be effective. I didn't get that from Angel. And in assessing Danny's career, since he's moved up to 147 pounds and all of his three losses has been at welterweight, there's been a consistent theme with him, not just the lack of quote unquote lack of activity, but where is the improvement in terms of his footwork? Everybody knows that he got lead feet, right? Um, you would think he would be able to use them more. And even during the night of the fight, just checking out commentary on boxing Twitter, there was similar complaints about Angel Garcia and his lack of specific instructions during the fight. Uh, but I guess so. I guess what I'm asking, given that kind of a long rant, is it time for Angel Garcia to do? Should more of the blame be placed on Angel and his ability as a trainer more than Danny and what he didn't do in the fight specifically?
It's no secret to anybody who's known me or read me. I am not a fan of Angel Garcia for both personal and professional reasons. But in this case, being fair, I don't have any criticism of the way he handled it. Come on, Danny is a veteran fighter. Danny has worked with his father as his trainer for years. You get to this point, what more communication do the two of you need other than exactly what Angel told him? You're not being busy enough. You know, to a certain point, then it's up to the fighter to decide, okay, how do I execute? He's the one in the ring. He's the one navigating the guy across from him. Angel was right. Danny wasn't busy enough. How much more explicit does he need to get in the 60 seconds they've got, in addition to anything else they need to do? Angel told him what he needed to hear. You need to get busy. I'm not sure that he needed to do a full blueprint and print it out and hand it to him at that point. So in this case, I'm going to defend Angel. I think the bottom line is, at this stage of his career, where he's got a lot of mileage on him, he's been in a lot of close, hard fights, his skills aren't advancing, so he needs to figure out other ways to be smart in the ring. And he has always struggled a bit at welterweight. Absolutely, his best days are at 140. So that's just a lot to overcome. And I think he's a good fighter, not a great one, and he's just simply hit his limits. That's it.
What say you, Daniel?
I'll put it to you this way: Gayle is probably better than me in this scenario. Yeah, you can say the certain things like, "Yeah, you're not getting busy, you're not being busy, you can go to the fight," and but that's who Danny Garcia is. That's the thing. You know what it falls into when it comes to a fighter. You kind of know the blueprint when it comes to Danny Garcia, but we have to dig a little bit deeper now, for sure, when it comes to this Angel situation. Because let's be blunt, like, first, the man, say what you want early on the story, early on in the act has gotten old. The act is just that now, an act. Like, you know what to expect when it comes to Angel Garcia. How he acts, what he's gonna say, what he's gonna do. Like, you can say it's charming in the beginning because you don't know about it, but then it's just what it is at this stage. However, that falls in line into the whole scenario. His bombastics don't make you think of some of the other things and pretty much tell you what his caliber will be as a trainer, such as how is it in the whole time that you've been there where people have seen your face, you've been on pretty decent fight cards, you've been a main event on a few cards, including this one, and yet the only fighter that is willing to have you as a trainer is your own son, and for the very looks of it, is strictly out of obligation.
Right.
That your son has you as a trainer. Because let's face facts when it comes into it. And this could be more of a criticism of how both to credit to how Danny Garcia has been maneuvered around in his career. A lot of his best fights, you have to think about it. There's been the caveats, or as by showing like highlights, there's been caveats around to it. Obviously, the fight that made him famous, Amir Khan, that put him on the map. He caught a fighter in Amir Khan, who we all know has a cotton candy chin. and he countered with a good shot. And we all know Khan's career hasn't been the same since. Eric Morales, he fought an old Eric Morales who, in the first fight, like he fought pretty well, but in the second fight, he did what he was supposed to do in the first fight. And there's a lot of earlier fights where you can say that's been the false scenario, but when he faces real top level competition, particularly now at welterweight, what happened with the Keith Thurman fight? He lost. What happened to this fight? He lost. And even in the fights where he lost, but then he ultimately won, you kind of know where he stands. The Mauricio Herrera fight's always going to haunt him. Because it's a fight he lost. And it actually probably would have been better if he would have lost that fight on the cards. Because then maybe it would have addressed the Angel issue earlier. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too deep. And now Angel realizing that as a father, you kind of have your son between a rock and a hard place. You basically bombast him after he loses because you didn't do your complete job. Yes, you tell him that he's not being busy. Yes, you tell him that he has to get his activity up. That's one thing, but you also have to give particular instructions. What happened to, how do you stop Spence from landing the jab? How about trying to get inside and get more into the body, try to slow him down? Because you saw it in the 8th and 9th round, Spence was a little bit winded. So why not focus on that? Why instead, in those rounds, particularly after that headbutt, after Spence was cut, and after like a couple of times where you could tell Spence was like 5 seconds early, already going to his corner. Why not after that? Why not after seeing that, go to the body, get him tired so he can open up the left hook into it instead of just trying to land headshots throughout and then ultimately letting Spence get his second win. It's unfortunately it's a bad situation, and like as a son, you kind of understand that it's tough for Danny to actually go and probably tell your father, who we all know the story about how he fought throat cancer and how he thought he was going to go, and then he recovered. How to tell your father after going through that, you're not the right guy for me. I need to move my career forward, and it needs to be with somebody else. But the bad part about it is, Gayle mentioned it, he's a veteran. At this point, you've reached the point where, with Danny Garcia, he is what he is. If there was any chance where he could have improved, where he would have changed his style, where he would have had a little bit more wrinkles to his repertoire, it probably would have been 2-3 years ago. Not at this stage. And unfortunately, unless they make the conscious decision to go back down to 140, Garcia's already hit the plateau that he's going to hit at welterweight. So he may already start going down the scale where he's just going to be one of the gatekeepers for the PBC. And it's sad to see it, but you made your bed, not lying it.
Yeah, he's between a rock and a hard place at this point of his career. Excuse me. He cannot get down to 140 pounds anymore. He's just too big for the weight. But as we've seen against Thurman, as we've seen against Porter, and now we saw against Spence, he's good, but he's not at that level. He's not elite. It'll be interesting to see where he goes in his career. Before we move on to briefly talk about Spence and what could be possible, what could be upcoming for him, want you guys to address a couple of comments here from the chat from Ivan DC20. He says, and I'll put it up on the screen for everybody to see. He says, "This Saturday I discovered what I had been speculating for a while. Spence lacks a good chin. He's a good boxer, but once he gets caught by a real power puncher or someone like Manny Pacquiao, I have my doubts." He went on to say, and the type of chin he has nothing to do with the accident he had. He's that just comes natural. I don't doubt his abilities, but without a good chin, anyone can go down sooner or later. Uh, First of all, I didn't see where a point where Spence was quote unquote hurt by Garcia. Garcia may have got his respect, but I didn't see a point where he was hurt. Um, and if you want to talk about how Spence has a questionable chin, um, you can say the same thing about Terrence Crawford, given his not his last fight against Brook, but the fight prior, where I don't care what he says, he got hurt against Kaliuskas. Um, and Pacquiao has been down too. It has been hurt uh, and wobbled and even put down and knocked out. I forgot what Marquez did to him, landing him to the point of the chin in 2012, 2013, in 2012. Uh, and we've seen Thurman hurt uh, head and body as a welterweight. So that's all relative. Uh, Gayle, Daniel, address the comments here in the chat about the questions regarding Errol Spence and his chin.
Well, I don't think I've seen him get blasted particularly hard, but he took several shots from Garcia, and Garcia is not much of a power puncher, but he seemed fine to me. I think the big test for him would be someone like Bud Crawford, or, although I doubt it's going to happen anytime soon, if ever, if he got in front of somebody like Virgil Ortiz, who has serious pop on his punches. Now, I'm not saying that they're equal in other ways. Virgil needs a whole lot more experience before he goes up against someone like Spence, although I'm not sure as much as people might think. So if he got in front of somebody like that, yeah, it might be a different story. I didn't see anything that would have concerned me one bit. And I've been very candid leading up to this fight that I thought it was a major mistake for Spence to have the teeth that were knocked out replaced with dental implants, which he did. You know, those are artificial teeth essentially screwed down into the bone of your jaw. They're never, ever going to be as rigid and strong as natural teeth held in by, the roots you were born with. Most NHL players who lose teeth, which is somewhere we see guys lose a lot of teeth, in the course of their athletic career, they do not get implants until after they retire, if at all. They get partials, artificial teeth that are on a bridge that you pop in and out, like maybe you see your grandma or your auntie have, right? And that's a smart thing to do. Those artificial implants that Errol has are always going to, in my mind, be an issue. And maybe he's not aware of it or very confident in them or as the best dentist on the planet. I don't know. I thought that was a bad idea. But weathered it fine this last week. Whether it's the same with Crawford or whether it's the same with a extreme power puncher in the division, it's another story. Even facing Sean Porter again, somebody that plays very rough. I think that is really my only remaining question in Spence. But I think chin-wise, I don't have any problems.
I'm hearing a little bit of breakage in your sound, Gayle, so you might have to dip out, and come right back in. I'll go to you, Daniel, quickly. Your response to the questions in the chat about maybe a leaky chin from Spence.
I don't think it was so much of a chin shot, but in the air, I think it was between like the third or fourth round. Danny did hurt Spence, but it was with a body shot. It wasn't a chin shot. He hurt him in the body. You can tell Spence Spence tensed up a little bit when it came to the body tech, which is why that's why it confounded me. Like, why, when you could tell that he was bothered after the butt, you didn't go after the body. You just focused on a little wound, but you kind of knew he was weak to the body in this fight. But that's the main thing that falls into it. He could be hurt when it came to the body shots, and the body can ultimately lead to the head. And you need, and depending on what fights he gets, it's going to be an interesting scenario where it falls into, because I know we're gonna talk about speculation when it comes into Bud. Like, one of the toughest tests has been Porter, because he's been a workhorse, and Porter is a tough person to get out in general. So, and he can be hurt when it came to the body, but it also could be a consequence where he, like I said, to me, he wasn't fully healthy. He was not fully healthy, but luckily he was able to fight a guy, Danny Garcia, who at the end of the day could not really hurt him that consistently. Now, whether that issue shows up in the future, we don't know. Like Gayle mentioned, how high is Virgil Ortiz ranked right now in the IBF? Because that's probably his only avenue. We know the WBC will do whatever they can to keep the money train going with the PBC, but the IBF may not be as so kind to Mr. Spence.
Quickly, I'm going back to you, Daniel. Keep your mic open. Let's discuss while we have some time. We're going to try to cut this show a little bit short because we started so late. Spence didn't mention when asked after the fight what's in his future. He just said he wants some time off. I can understand that because of the ordeal he's been through over the past year with the accident and trying to recover from that. But it's still fun to speculate from our end what's next to him. We all know the big fight for him out there is with one Bud Crawford. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon because of obligations and issues that we discussed in previous episodes. So with that being the case, in terms of PBC and his handlers, where do you think Spence? What do you think Spence's next route will be when he returns to the ring in 2021?
Well, I can see a rematch with Porter happening. That could be something right up their alley. I know people are trying to talk about a Pacquiao fight. Come on, folks. Manny's people, if there was ever some sort of agreement, Manny's people will worm their way out of that agreement. Manny, if anything, Manny's probably going to do a farewell, sort of like a last hurrah fight, something where he knows he'll win, where he retires on a win, and then in 2022 focuses fully on becoming president of the Philippines. So Porter could be a nice bet. Now, one person they might throw in there, like for a little bit of a voluntary, and like I said, it could be somebody that would have the dog in him to fight. It's a fighter that was on the undercard of this fight and looked pretty good considering the opponent, and that's Josecito Lopez. Maybe you can have like a voluntary against in a fight against somebody like Lopez, who you know will not back down, will not give fight, but you also know that it's not going to be too much of a test. Like, make that the tune-up fight, because the fight that people want, you either have to wait till Crawford comes to your side of the street, or you had to make it to the point that to Bob Arum and now Heyman, that's the only option left on the table. Because as long as there's options on the table, those two men will not deal with each other. So Porter, Lopez, Pacquiao, I put like as a distant third. I don't think his people will do it. So that's ultimately where I think it's going to be lined up. And thanks, Gail. Like, okay, it's not a top 15. Okay, good. When it comes to Vergil Ortiz, that kid needs at least a year before he's ready.
You mentioned Porter Daniel. I don't know if that rematch will happen because after the fight, Porter was doing ring commentary for Fox pay per view. Porter is ranked number one by the BC and the BC and the BO, and he mentioned that he has his eyes more on a fight against Bud Crawford rather than a rematch with Spence. I would like to see that, by the way, because Crawford, who was in attendance at the fight, he needs something big, and he needs something big soon. He's starting to face too much criticism. He's starting to face a lot of criticism for his lack of opponents at 147 pounds. But in terms of Spence, Pacquiao, I agree with you. I don't know if that fight will happen next. I think he has a mandatory at some point in 2021 against a guy who not many people have heard of. From your perspective, Gail, in the immediacy, what do you see for Errol Spence?
I think there's a Pacquiao fight coming down the pike this summer, and Crawford versus Porter, and the winners face each other. I think that's exactly what we have going on.
It would be nice if it would happen. It would be nice if that would happen. Kind of a semi-final, if you will, with the winner supremacy at 147 pounds.
A bit of a tournament, yeah, and it's doable, and it puts off the inevitable problems with making a Spence Crawford fight right now. I'll tell you what I didn't like. The one thing I did not like from Spence was at the conclusion of the fight in a post-fight news conference, everybody knowing that Bud was sitting there, and finally Fox Sports, after they, first they tried to get away with the inevitable graphic listing all the welterweight champions that, oh, by the way, didn't happen to include Bud Crawford. And the commentators more or less shamed them into owning it. But then they did give him some considerable camera time ringside, which is customary when you see other big names in the crowd. They did show him. They did show him at length, more than just, meeting their basic obligation. So they come up to Spence, and what do you want next? Come on. That's where Errol needs to declare himself. Bud is right there. He wouldn't say it. He would not say it. No, I'm going to be chilling on my ranch. I want to go buy a new horse. He's suddenly into his horses and his animals. And, he got prodded a couple of times, and he just could not spit it out. Now, I get it. It's like when you're negotiating price, you never want to be the first one to name a number. And I think that's what's going on. I still didn't like it. I still didn't like the game playing. Now, he could have been clever about it and said, oh, come on. I know what you all want me to say. I don't even need to say it out loud. You all can go around and talk about whatever you want. I'm going to take some time off. But he wouldn't even acknowledge it. Come on, Errol. Come on. Tell the truth.
Oh yeah, I hear you, but in this case, I think it's a case of it doesn't need to be said because we know what it is. So I'm not going to get on him too much about that. We all know the deal, and let's hope that your proposal, your scenario, comes out into fruition. Fans will love it. Keith Thurman wouldn't like it because it would leave him out the picture, but everybody else would say, let's do it. Let's hope it happens. And we will see the winner of a Spence Pacquiao bout face the winner of a Crawford Porter bout let's just say a year from now. A perfect setup. Who could be mad at that? Outside of one Thurman. Let's hope it happens. Let's move on to some other matters here. And I'll go to you, Daniel, and talk about your favorite fighter, Billy Joe Saunders. He fought last week on Friday.
That's me laughing out here. Come on.
Against one Mark Murray. And one-sided affair. He won easily, definitive across the board. I think it was one may have been a shutout. The other two cards may have been, I think, 10, 11 ones on the rounds. I thought at one point he had the chance to stop him, but Martin Murray proved to be a tough nut. But he's past his prime at 38 years old. In comparison to his last fight in which he struggled, to Saunders' last fight in which he struggled to in an 11th round stoppage, Billy Joe, as you like to call him, Billy Ho, looked reasonably well. The question is, because it's no need to recap the fight, really give a definitive, a in-depth description, because he just boxed the shoes off. The question is, moving forward, will we see this kind of consistency from Billy Joe in future fights? Two, he and Hearn has talked about it's time now to get the big fights against the winner of Canelo, Callum Smith, or Demetrius Andrade, or whoever's there at 168 pounds. Will he get it?
First, let's just say we have to clap for Billy Ho, because for somehow, some way, he did not fuck up and have this fight canceled. First of all, that is a miracle on miracles. I don't know what saint he prayed to, but he finally didn't fuck up and actually got into a fight. Now, say what you want. This was a Martin Murray well past his prime. It was a Martin Murray that was fighting a lot more conservatively than even what you see him do. And at the end of the day, like, if you just want to have an analysis, just watch the first fight. Just watch the Lemieux fight. Only in this time with a guy who's not as much of a puncher as Lemieux was. But that's what it looked like. He hit the jab really, really well. He was able to land good body shots. He had great timing, good defense. Now, this is the thing, unfortunately, with Saunders. He has these moments where he looks absolutely brilliant, where he shows you the skill, the speed, the reflexes, where you can say, like, yeah, that's a guy that could challenge for the top spot at 160 or 168. And then when he gets the actual opportunities, bullshit happens, to say in plain word. Supposedly a contract situation when it came to fighting Triple G at 160. The situation involving the drug test when it came to fighting Jacobs. I think when it was supposed to be fighting Jacobs. And being a candidate for Canelo, so he messed that up too. He just has to make sure that in somehow, some way, he has to keep his eye on the ball when it comes to making this fight. Because now when it comes into making a fight between the winner of Canelo and Callum Smith, it's doable now from a promotional standpoint. There's no roadblocks. There's also no roadblocks in getting that rematch with Eubanks that people have wanted to see in the UK for a while, because that's the one fight probably that has left unsettled business on the table that wouldn't be bad to make. And yes, we know that Eubanks, I think, is with the PBC now, but guess what? It isn't a situation like Bob and Al. This is Eddie and Al, and Eddie and Al will break bread. So there's areas to be made at 168. If he's serious about doing 168, and if you want to see him against somebody that has power as a puncher, like I just mentioned, Eddie and Al, break bread. If you're not going to give me Eubanks, and if Canelo doesn't go into the sweepstakes, because Canelo might be thinking other avenues, why not Billy Joe Saunders versus David Benavidez? You could sign me up for that any day. Billy Ho versus La Bandera Roja. I'll sign up for that fight. I'm just afraid that after another one of these instances where he looks absolutely great, he's going to find a way to screw himself up again.
Well, number one, Saunders, a possible fight between Saunders and Benavidez. Style-wise, it would really be a good fight. It will bring out the best in Saunders, but can Benavidez comfortably make 168 pounds? One. Two, and I'll go to you, Gayle. Can Billy Joe Saunders be consistent? Is this a case of Saunders finally waking up at age 31 and saying, I don't have much time now. It's time to make my move and make my move right now? Or is this another case of him taking a step forward and then turning around and taking a step forward and then turning around and taking a step back, either with his performance in the ring or something, or doing something stupid outside of the ring?
You know, I'm very tempted to say I don't give a rat's ass about Billy Joe Saunders or what the hell happens to him, but this is a show that's meant to be informative, and that's not a useful comment. So what I will say is,
look, if that's what you feel, go ahead.
that's exactly what I feel. But I don't think anybody should get too excited one way or another about what we saw this weekend. He fought a washed-up 38-year-old Martin Murray who's had the crap beat out of him more times than I can count. I mean, how serious can we take that? Really? I just think it's a non-factor. He is a worthy opponent, for worthy guy to put in there against some of these names who need someone standing in front of them that's got some legitimacy. I'm not sure how much of a measuring stick it is. I will agree with Daniel about this. I'd love to see David Benavidez kick his ass, and I'm good with that. But he does not, no matter who he faces, if I get a announcement of fill in the blank versus Billy Joe Saunders, do I go, oh my God, yes, hot damn, oh, I can't wait? No. Against nobody do I say that. Nobody. So whatever happens to him, I'm perfectly fine with it. Don't expect me to get all enthusiastic about it.
In other words, it is what it is with him.
That works. That's the short version of the 45 seconds I just wasted.
Let's move on to staying over in the UK.
What about if it? Wait, Mike, I just got to do this.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was about to say, what if it's Chavez Jr.?
Oh.
Well, since I'm one of those people that actually paid the $10 to see his pay-per-view the other night from Mexico, just because we could. You know what? I got more laughs out of that than just about anything I've seen in the last couple of weeks. So you know what? It was $10 well spent. That would be the two biggest heels in boxing against each other. But there's no way in hell Chavez Jr. gets down enough in weight to fight Saunders. It ain't happening.
Leslie cuts off a leg and read a quick moment here in the chat. Quick comment from Sean Fitzgerald. I'm sensing that Gayle and Billy Joe don't really mix. Maybe it's just me. No, it's not just you. Daniel can't stand him either. I only troll him when I say Saunders is his favorite fighter.
I don't know where you're getting that idea. My goodness, I don't know. Maybe I'm not expressing myself well.
Yeah. I'm the one that trademarked. I'm the one that trademarked Billy Joe. Yeah, well, I'm the one.
I mean, the joke's got
and I'm like, Sean, you should listen to some to the earlier podcast. Yeah, but the way Gayle sees Saunders, like if you want to look at earlier episodes from the past few years, Sean, is the way I looked at Terry Flanagan. And y'all remember how it looked at Terry Flanagan.
Yeah, that's the second favorite fighter, Sean. So there you go. There you go.
We've all got one. We've all got one of these, right? Daniel's is Saunders. Mine is Chavez Jr. Who's yours, Michael?
Like, dislike, more dislike.
Just that eye roll fighter, right? Just
maybe Broner.
That's a good one.
That's
sort of a universal. That's like typo blood. It's the universal, boxer everyone loves to hate.
Right. Let's move on to stay in the UK for one more fight before we go on to some news. Like I said, we're going to shorten things here, so we're not going to talk about as many fights as we normally do, as we could possibly. And let's talk about Anthony Yarde right quick. Made news last year when he fought Sergey Kovalev. Gave Kovalev a good scrap. I think he hurt him in round 7, 8, something like that. Before he can't succumb to the skills and power of Kovalev. Got stopped in the 11th round in Russia. Many fans in the U.S. saw the fight on ESPN, or one of the ESPN networks. Well, in his third, what turns out to be his third fight in 2020, fought a undefeated guy by the name of London Arthur. And to the surprise of many, he lost. He lost by close decision, 115-114. On two of the judges' scorecards, the third scorecard had Yarde in the lead by 117-111. A lot of discrepancy in terms of who won. I felt that Arthur deserved the verdict, close verdict. My problem is, and from the little bit from the clips and I saw the fight, I wasn't able to see it in full and before we began recording things. He suffered from the same problems I saw in Dubois when he fought Joe Joyce. That is, he couldn't avoid the jab all night long. And just like I was disappointed in Angel Garcia's instructions during the fight, during Danny's fight against Spence, I was disappointed in Tunde Ajayi's instructions to Yarde in the fight against Arthur. His head was right down the middle to be pecked, and that's what Arthur did. He pecked away all night long. He didn't throw anything definitive and hard, but he did enough to accumulate points and get the decision, in my opinion. I didn't see adjustments. I didn't see any improvement from Yarde that from the Kovalev fight last year into this fight. And just like I'm questioning Angel Garcia as a trainer now, I'm questioning Tunde Ajayi in terms of Anthony Yarde. And I'll give some commentary, give you the opportunity to give some quick commentary. I'll just add here that a lot of people were skeptical of Tunde Ajayi when the news broke prior to the Kovalev fight that he really didn't do any sparring, and he didn't do much sparring in the lead up to the Kovalev fight. More questions are raised or coming to me in terms of Ajayi and how he's handling Yarde outside the ring. What say you the level of surprise that this fight, which didn't get much billing, did not get much coverage, that he was defeated?
Well, speaking of needing a new trainer, young Mr. Yarde needs to dismiss his father.
Well, Tunde Ajayi, he's not his. Tunde Ajayi is not his dad, but still.
Right. This was meant to be an under the radar, get back on the horse fight, and it didn't work out that way for him. He's just got some serious thinking to do about his approach. Yarde is learning on the job. He's learning some very hard lessons from these losses. And, losses are okay, really, in the long run, if you are taking the lessons to heart and making the adjustments, adjusting your training and the fixes where necessary. And, I'm not convinced that lack of sparring is completely responsible for his problems, but it's certainly an approach that every other good champion has, nobody else has taken that path. So for you to be that contrary to everybody else in the sport, it has to be demonstrated that you found some magic formula that nobody else has considered, and there's no evidence of that. But if they continue, to just be this, pig-headed about things, he's going to continue to lose, or he's at least going to fail to progress as much as he should be. So I hope he takes a nice long break over the holidays, that somebody gets to him with some very hard questions that they really dig into, and maybe he decides this is just not for him. That's possible. What else could he do? Who knows? But he's really got to really think. I mean, does he really want to keep having this happen? No. He's got to rethink his approach. Clearly, there's something very, very wrong at the back end.
Your reaction to this, what many considers a significant upset, Daniel?
Well, like I said, I didn't see the fight as it happened. I started to catch up on a little bit of the highlights. That was a close fight. But unfortunately, it was close enough where you can say the decision could go either way. I do feel bad for Yarde when it comes into falling into these traps. We know he had his shot against Kovalev, and like I said, that didn't come to fruition. But unfortunately, at this stage, you shouldn't dog yourself in when it comes to close things, especially in the division that is as stacked as light heavyweight is. And particularly also when, sir, you may have to start paying attention to your countryman, Buatsi. So that's something probably to focus on, rebuild the career, rebuild it slowly, because right now, probably the fighter that's you probably have a good shot of hurting, but consider size, is Bibble. But then Bibble will just box your socks off, especially if he can see it within the next 3 rounds.
Right.
So, and we know Beterbiev hits like a mule. So there's a lot of open things, including like a card that we talked about before the beginning of the fight that's going to happen next year for Top Rank. So there's a lot of avenues open. Anthony Yarde has a lot of time to rebuild. You shouldn't try to rush yourself to get back into the title picture immediately, especially like I mentioned, Buatsi. There may be some business you need to handle at home.
I think at this point we can all agree that in the aftermath, whether he believes he won or not, he clearly has some improvement to do if he wants to achieve his dream of becoming a world champion. And his camp, the fighter, the trainer, everybody associated with him needs to reevaluate things, because at this rate, he's not even close. He's not even close to making it, and he has some things to work on for sure. Let's move on to talk about some news here. And yeah, last week we talked about Jake Paul and that farce of a quote unquote fight against Nate Robinson, which has left Robinson being forever a meme and being trolled for the rest of 2020. Well, let's talk about his brother, Logan. Earlier this summer, there was clips of him calling out one Floyd Mayweather. Well, I guess Mayweather saw the numbers that Jake Paul got, and the attention that Jake Paul fight against Nate Robinson. Saw the attention that Tyson Jones card got, and maybe some alarm bells rung in his ear as yesterday, last evening. This particular episode is being recorded on December 7th. Well, yesterday, Sunday, December 6th. Floyd sent out a tweet basically saying that he's going to fight Logan Paul um, February 2021. The offer's been on the table for a while. I mentioned earlier in the show, I write for Kings Three Kings Boxing. We reported that there was a possibility this fight would happen back in September, and Floyd basically just gave the official uh, your reaction. Why Floyd, and why you being such a hoe for the attention and for the money, which you really don't need it. Daniel, Gayle, whoever want to touch this, yep, go.
First of all, I didn't know about the Logan Paul card because it answers the question, why Logan? Like, Jake Paul is the one that memeified Nate Robinson. Like, if anything, like I said, you would have figured just for the hotepness of it all that Floyd would want to box Jake, not Logan. But I didn't know about the call out when it came to Logan Paul and Floyd. Now, part of me is disgusted. I could go into the whole Stephen A. rant when he was mad at Phil Jackson, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, flat out disgusted. That's part of me. Because this, okay, how do I put it? The Jones Tyson thing, we all knew was a circus. We all knew that the only thing that was going to happen was it's either going to be two 50-year-old men fighting like two 50-year-old men, or we were going to watch Tyson go full Tyson and possibly murder Roy Jones Jr. in the ring. That's what people paid to see. You were either going to pay to see two old men hug, or you were going to see a murder on pay-per-view. Let's be blunt here. But you didn't. You got the formula with it. Floyd at this stage, especially now, there's no incentive for him to actually fight again. Like, he answered every question that he had when he beat Pacquiao. Like, that shut up pretty much everybody else that fall into it. And Floyd is not the type of person that he's going to be like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be the scalp that another young fighter makes his name off, particularly at the welterweight division. He's just not. So if you do this, and considering the only other avenues where are shut down, like we mentioned, like we started at what was it earlier this year or maybe 2019? I keep forgetting when he went to Japan to fight that MMA kid.
That was 2019, early
In an
2019,
exhibition,
2018, something like that.
in an exhibition fight in Japan. Yeah, so he's, like I said, when doing that or trying to maybe get in the fight with Conor McGregor in UFC, but probably negotiate the rules to such an extent that this essentially is a boxing match inside the octagon to make sure that he doesn't get hurt or loses. This is where Floyd lands now. Now, part of me, like I said, well, part of me is disgusted. Part of me is gonna be interested because if I'm not mistaken, Logan Paul is the idiot brother who decided to film in the Japanese suicide forest.
Yep.
I think I mentioned this last week too when it came into it, but it's unfortunate. There's a forest in Japan where people famously go to commit suicide, and like Logan Paul got a lot of heat for that. He got a lot of heat in general just because he treated the whole trip like a circus, and normally Japanese people aren't exactly keen to that behavior. So part of me would be very, very interested in seeing into that. But have you Have you seen the tiered pay-per-view structure it is? I think it's supposed to be like, if you buy it now, it's like $10 or $15, and then it goes up to like $30 after a certain point. And after a million buys, then it goes up to a certain amount, and then afterwards, like near the end, it'll be $70. Personally, I think they'll hit 1 million buys, they'll find a way to cancel that fight, and they won't give a refund.
Damn. What say you, Tud? That's stopped me in my tracks. What say you, Gail?
Listen. Let's remember that on the Tyson Jones undercard, way buried under the Jake Paul, Nate Robinson co-main, was one of Mayweather's fighters, Badu Jack. So Mayweather was involved in that previous promotion in his guise as Badu Jack's promoters. I'm sure conversations took place. He was privy to the financials. And he said, listen, young man, you take care of business with Mr. Robinson. Let's talk. This comes as no surprise. I think a lot of the trash talk and call outs were completely engineered. There is nothing Floyd Mayweather does that isn't deliberate. And I think this was set up long in advance, well thought out. He sees the money. He sees no threat in this kid. He's been down this road with these weird exhibitions he's done offshore. Those are a test drive. How do they go? How is he received? What kind of money can he make? You know what? Floyd goes in with all the votes counted, with all of the variables in place long before we ever hear a thing. And hey, I don't think anybody's getting hurt by this. You want to spend your money on this. It's voluntary. Buyer beware. That's all I always say. Understand what you're getting. Understand that if you want to see high level athletics, this will not be it. If this is your type of entertainment, go for it. Have at it. Enjoy yourself.
I think we may have rebooted Mike. I think the pay-per-view thing may have actually frozen him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. I was just talking. I was on mute. My bad. Again, I hear what you're saying. It is entertainment, but why? I'll ask the question again. Floyd, why are you being such a hoe for the attention and for the money when you don't need it?
Well, wait a minute.
The
definition of need varies among human beings. You, in that position, might not need it. I think Floyd does need it.
And that's a sad indictment if that's the case. Why, to answer your question, Daniel, why Logan instead of Jake? Because of that video that Logan did that people still talk about, for good or bad, for better or worse, for good or bad. Because Logan is more popular, because Logan makes more money. That's why he could make more money fighting a Logan than he could fight a Jake. That's why. And that's why, it is what it is. I don't like it, but if people are going to eat it up and pay the money and shell out the money to buy it, that's on them. It is, Florida make mincemeat of the dude. He'll slap him around for a bit. He'll probably even go the distance, but people want to be entertained and they consider this entertainment. Bless their heart. Will I cover it? No. This would be the only time I'll talk about it? Yeah. But because everybody's mentioning it, I had to address it. But this is the last time you'll hear it here on last time you'll hear anything about it here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Last words on this, Daniel and Gayle? And I think that silence says it all.
That was it. Hey, the date scheduled for February, it's a crazy world. A lot of things can change between now and then. So let's see.
Like I said, folks, get ready. If you're going to buy this and you suddenly hear that it's canceled, better call your credit card companies because it wouldn't surprise me.
Indeed, let's move on to preview some fights here as we get ready to shut things down. We got about another 15 minutes or so to go. Fights that's happening this weekend. The main fight, the return of Anthony Joshua, will be this first time. He's fighting Kubrat Pulev on the 12th. For Joshua, his first time in the ring since regaining the WBA, WBO, IBF World Heavyweight titles with his rematch win over Andy Ruiz back in December of last year, fighting a mandatory defense against IBF mandatory challenger Pulev. Go to you, Daniel. Been a year roughly since Josh was fought. In his last fight against Ruiz, he boxed. He moved a lot in the ring. Ruiz didn't do a great deal in terms of activity, and Joshua just had his way, won by a comfortable margin. The significant thing about that was Joshua's weight. He was significantly down in the pounds. His body looked different. He had a different mindset as well. What do you expect for him in this upcoming bout against Pulev in London? It's going to air live on DAZN. How much of a chance do you give Pulev in this fight, or do you think it's just a case of Joshua too big, too skilled, too slick, too young for the likes of a Pulev?
Was that to me or Garrett? Because I didn't hear it.
That was to you, Daniel.
Okay, to me. Okay. Well, yeah. This is to me just like it's a showcase fight. Like it has to be done. We know they've been trying to do this, I think, for close to 2 years now. And it's just something that Joshua has to take care of. The only thing that can worry you is we know now because of the Ruiz fight, the first one, and we know because of the Klitschko fight, he can be chin checked from time to time. So Pulev needs to land a really decent shot in order to get it. But at the same time, you have to remember that I think during training for the Klitschko Pulev fight, Anthony Joshua was one of the sparring partners that I think had to that prepared him for that. Ultimately, now it's going to be a different stage, but I expect a complete showcase from Joshua, and then it is just now then the waiting game to see what'll happen in the courtroom between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury.
Your thoughts on this fight, Gayle?
This is a knock the ring rust off occasion. Joshua's fans will tune in. Pulev is a perfectly worthy opponent, if not a particularly skilled one. He's kind of got one speed. He's easy to predict. Joshua will need to be careful so that he doesn't get caught. So I think we'll see very much the same sort of fight he put on with Andy Ruiz. That's a smart thing for him to do. It won't be a completely thrill-a-minute fight, I don't think. But I think his fans will be so glad to see him back. They'll give him a bit of a pass for taking the fight, for having a fight in 2020, where not every top-level champion has been in the ring this year. So I think he's going to get a bit of leeway on this one. And we all know that this is an exercise in keeping the train running on track toward what we all want to see, which is all British showdown between Joshua and Tyson Fury.
Also, the same day as Joshua and Pulev over in New Zealand, and I'll go back to you, Gail. An interesting local heavyweight fight between former world heavyweight belt holder Joseph Parker. He's going to fight Junior Fa, all Kiwi battle, if you will. And I'm looking at this, Fa. We've talked about him previously, and he's young, he's undefeated, he's big, and he's strong. But I look at Parker, and if Parker is on his game, if he's in shape, I just think that he's too experienced and too skilled for the likes of in some ways. I compare this to Joyce and Dubois. I made the mistake of thinking that Dubois, because he's young and strong and powerful, that he would be too much for Joyce. But ultimately, Joyce proved with his age, his experience, and his skill set, particularly with the jab, it was too much for Dubois, and Dubois didn't have the experience to cope with what Joyce brought to the table that night. I get the same sense here. I think that Parker and what he brings to the table in terms of a very good left hand, good hand speed, and just overall skill set will be too much for Junior Fa. Your thoughts?
Well, good thoughts, but they're going to be delayed a little bit. This fight was called off a couple of weeks
man, I missed it. I'm sorry. I missed the news on that.
Called off due to problems that problems were discovered with Fa in blood tests, not drug related, nothing like that, some kind of serious abnormalities, and he was scheduled to undergo surgery. I haven't heard the outcome of that, but it was way too late notice to really find a new opponent. So there's discussions about a new date. The thinking is maybe March is a landing spot. Fa is supposed to be sidelined for a minimum of 4 weeks, and is not even going to get back to training this year. So unfortunately for us, we won't see the fight. Fortunately, maybe that'll give Joseph Parker more time to work up some of his movie parody videos, which he posts on his social media accounts. And if you haven't seen Joseph Parker playing Marty McFly or Forrest Gump or, Will Ferrell and Anchorman, You're In for a Treat, or Dancing the Time Warp with Tyson Fury and Michael Buffer, I'm just going to leave it there. If you haven't seen those, do yourself a favor when the show's over and check out Joe Parker Boxer on Twitter.
I take it you were thoroughly entertained.
Thoroughly entertained. This guy has a future after boxing in the entertainment industry. And I'm not kidding. And by the way, did y'all know that he can play the piano and sing? Yes, he can.
Well, play the piano, I knew that, but sing, that's all relative and depending on your perspective. Let's move. Since that fight is off, I know a fight that's going to happen. I believe it's still going to happen. Shakur Stevenson fighting a guy by the name of Toka Khan Clary. Bout is going to be on ESPN Junior Lightweight Contest. I'll go back to you, Gail, and you can follow up. This will be the final card fight that we'll talk about on the night. Well, we may put in one more fight, but let's talk about Stevenson. I look at this bout, and I can't think of nothing more than a tune-up bout. Stevenson, who's recently moved up to 130 pounds, looking for an eventual shot at junior lightweight, a world title in the 130-pound division. in 2021. You know, he's young. He's ultra talented. I like the mean streak that I've seen from him in his last couple of bouts. He's ascending. I just think he's going to be too much, and I think he's going to have his way with Mr. Clary. Your viewpoint. This is for you, Gayle.
First of all, yes, the fight is still on. There will be a news conference tomorrow, so we'll get to hear a little more from everybody. Listen, I think of all the promoters, Top Rank, in a lot of aspects, has had the best year. Certainly one of the most successful fights with Loma and Lopez that a lot of people are, I'm sure, going to name fight of the year. You know, let's not forget they pulled in a $17 million gate in February. Yes, Fury Wilder 2 was this year. It doesn't seem like it, does it? That was a long time ago. That was in the pre-pandemic era, just barely. That was the last fight I covered ringside live, that's for sure. I think this is, sort of Time Warner's last stamp on the year. You know, it's no secret how high Bob Arum is and the whole Top Rank organization on Shakur Stevenson. Hey, why not put their guy in front of the audience one more time this year? And a couple of their other folks, making this card with Stevenson in the main event allows them to get a couple of their other names developing this year in front of the public. Edgar Berlanga is going to fight an 8-round super middleweight opener on that same card. And
I think Verdejo's going to fight Nakatani as well.
Yes, Verdejo's on the card, but the threat for fighter of the year, Clay Collard, will be making one more appearance. And I need to check, but I think that might make 7 fights this year for Clay Collard. I will verify that in just a moment, friends, as I check BoxRec. But Clay Collard,
he's fighting like this is 1920 instead of 2020.
Actually, it is only his 6th fight this year. But if you count,
that's like I said. Yes, he's acting like this. He's fighting like it's 1920 instead of 2020. That's old school right there, fighting that many fights in a year.
It will mean that in the last 2 years, since actually, in the last, let me do the math here. In the last 19 months, he's had 14 fights. That's amazing. And yeah, none of them have been, 12-round fights. But still, give the man credit. That's just nothing short of amazing. Talk about, running with an opportunity when it's handed to you. That's just fantastic. I mean, who doesn't love it? He's going to ride this, until the horse drops, right? And hey, I'm sure the minute he steps up into serious, competition, he's going to have problems. But he is learning on the job. He is entertaining. You can't say that for a lot of guys. You could see him making progress. It's just a damn good time. I say, hey, if Shakur wants to stay busy, 10-rounder, go for it. Why not? And that's smart of ESPN. I mean, they have really leaned into the situation they've got and made the most of it.
Quickly to you, Daniel, to Gayle's point, this is basically a stay busy fight for young Shakur.
Yep, it's a showcase fight, and it's also a fight to keep him on the radar, because we know since that win over Loma, Fino has pretty much taken a lot of the shine in Top Rank in that lower weight class outside of Bud. So Shakur needs to keep his head in there, keep showing that, I'm still in this picture, run this weight class. I'm still willing to get down and fight 130 because eventually I will make 135, and maybe eventually I will have to see Mr. Lopez down the line. But first, I may have to see Mr. Herring. So it's a showcase fight. It is what it is.
Quick prediction: nothing against Jamel Herring, but when Stevenson fights him, he's going to beat him. And to make an even more provocative point, if he ever gets in the ring with Lopez, he'll beat him as well. And I think I'll end the show on that note and leave that little nugget for the folks. Um, I want to thank everybody with the comments. Ivan, DC20, Sean Fitzgerald for the comments, and I'll give a shout out to Ivan for his comments about Spence. I don't agree with him, but I'm not mad touching a subject which I may not necessarily agree with or agree to disagree. Keep it moving because it was nothing really. It wasn't to the point where it ticked me off or anything. Like it was stupid. He has his points. It was a provocative point, in my opinion, and you move on. It's the game of competitive banter, if you will. I want to go around the panel here. First of all, let me say before that, if you like what you've heard here, if you're checking us out live on YouTube, please hit that like button and please make sure to subscribe. If you're checking us out on a podcast or on a podcast platform like Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, or any other podcast platform, make sure you hit that subscribe button there as well. Please leave your comments on iTunes specifically. I would love to hear from you in terms of what we do well and what we can do to improve the show. 5-star review on iTunes will get read on a future episode. Go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first, and always end the show with ladies first. Gayle from Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk Dancing with the Stars, or for those who want to check her out on a semi-regular, bi-weekly basis on TMZ. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You can even find me commenting on a story in USA Today. They're watching me on Twitter, people. Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. And truly a wonderful story about a retiring Southwest airline pilot. It's retweeted on my feed, which is PR Pro San Diego, if you want to read the story. In any event, my regular boxing column, which is the business we're in businesses, pretty good considering what's gone on this year. That is at Communities Digital News, which is COM, COMM, Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat. They get ready to start. The NBA is getting ready to kick back up later on this month. Or for those who want to check you out, throw counter punches to fools talking nonsense on Twitter, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Rockstein9, RAWKUZ99. Definitely catch on there because I was actually looking forward to that Joseph Parker Jr. fight because I've been one of the people that has been high on Parker for a bit. And he's still world caliber, but Fall, like I said, Fall is an interesting one because he did beat him in the amateurs, but oh well. And also, I do believe we had the Canelo fight with Callum Smith is this Saturday too. I don't know. Is it this Saturday or next Saturday?
No.
Like
Canelo fight is
next Saturday.
That's next Saturday. That is on the 19th, a day after Golovkin fighting Zerametsa.
Correct.
Okay, just because I remember, like I said, it was one of those dates. But either way, yeah, definitely follow. Like I said, follow us here, and a special shout out to somebody that was on with us a lot. Unfortunately, can't now because of work. Jake Rivera. Like, keep your head up, man. We know what I feel what you're going through, man. But keep your head up, man. Hope everything's well.
Indeed, indeed. Shout out to Jacobs. I'm not going to go into details specifically because um, uh, he, quite frankly, didn't give us the liberty to. But yeah, uh, if for those who listen to the show for a while, he couldn't make it on the show because situations where, in terms of his employment, he's into a new job now because of that. The schedule, his new work schedule, he couldn't make it. But I'll just say that he's dealing with some family issues. He disclosed the news to us today privately, and yeah, thoughts and prayers to Jacob and his family, and um, he's in our prayers, and I hope everything works out. I'll just say that. And for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all the information about this pound for pound box report, if you're checking us out on live at the YouTube, just hit the description stuff below, and you'll find all the information there. Where to follow us, where you can donate and whatnot. For everyone else who are checking us out on other platforms outside of YouTube, I should say, uh, go to the blog page, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com, or even the Twitter page, Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page at P4P Box Report. On the blog page, if you check the top right of the blog page, the right hand side of the blog page, you'll find links to where to find us on Facebook, on Twitter, where you can donate. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link, where to find us all over various podcast platforms. And finally, a link to my online coaching page, as I said at the beginning of the show as well. Um, you can. I have an online coaching page. I'm a coach with online coach with Beachbody. If you want to check out some, I'm in a fitness group. I'm heading a fitness group. Let's Build Together November Challenge. It's almost set to end. This is the last week of that. Going to do another fitness challenge in December and to kick off 2021. Um, if you're interested in any of the programs on Eat Beachbody on Demand, check out my coaching page there. Or if you're interested in 2 weeks of free workouts, which was, take advantage of that. Check out my coaching page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page, and I'm going to still get on Daniel until he joins. Um, I'm gonna stay on him until he joins. The 10 rounds, I think, is again. I'm gonna keep saying I think it's right up his alley. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Joshua Pulev. We will do a recap uh, Shakur Stevenson fighting Khan. And we may also talk about some of the undercard bouts that Gail mentioned, Berlanga, Clay Collard for Deho and Nakatani, which is a pretty interesting fight, low key. And we will do a preview of the aforementioned Canelo Alvarez is going to fight Callum Smith on the 19th. That fight is going to happen in San Antonio, Texas, on the undercard of that. You talk about activity. One of the other more active world champions is Julio Cesar Martinez, who's a little monster down at 112 pounds. He's going to defend his flyweight title against a guy by the name of Rodriguez on the undercard of the Canelo bout. That's going to be on the 19th. On the day before that, Gennady Golovkin making his long-awaited return to the ring. He's going to fight a mandatory defense, I believe, against Kamil Zerameta. And finally, on a separate card, how far has Zerto Ramirez fallen? He's going to fight on Fight TV in Galveston, Texas, against Alfonso Lopez. Michael Hunter is going to be on the undercard of that. So a lot of boxing to talk about next week. Once again, I want to thank Sean Fitzgerald, Ivan DC20 for their comments in the chat. For Gayle from Communities Digital News, for Daniel of the Inscriber, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 309 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.